I am from the presence wherein there is not time, but only the eternal now. I experience in a dimension chosen to be close to your own, that we may come into communion in again bringing truth of being upon this wondrous creation. I retain even in the midst of this very relationship, the awareness of your realm and of the universal being which inhabits it, as well as the cosmos. I bring a message that is vital to you in these final days of your historical journey. Do not be astounded nor confounded by my presence, for my individual identity comes into being only as I enter the context of my relationship with you. When we are no longer needed in this capacity, I, like you, will merge back into the being behind all being. There, I, as will you, remain in unity and fulfillment until the next impulse comes to send us on another mission. In the interim, there is no distinction between me and the Source. I and others of my kind desire at this time to bring humans to the same level of awareness. It is urgently mandatory that this be accomplished, that there be at least a remnant of truth to extend through the physical and into the birthing and presence of the new. It would mean nothing to you if I tell you I am a focus of sorts, of collective consciousness, for I represent that which is manifested in reality, the same as are you, manifested into form, as projected by our journey in connection one with the other, each only to perform to the best ability our function, and service unto that source. You cannot yet suspect what the singularity of collective human consciousness might be. You still draw identity from the present form of your expression. You feel defined and limited by flesh and bones, and conscious limitation of perception and understanding. This is the purpose, but also comes the purpose of reaching beyond and into the reality of truth of existence. Ours is a task of leaving truth into the hands of the multitudes, and so shall it be. Possibly you are beginning to comprehend your oneness with other forms of life. For me to tell you with limiting definitions that you have of self, that I represent an element or a focus of your collective consciousness, would actually be less accurate than to say that I am simply extraterrestrial. You see, I meet all the criteria of the latter term, in that I do come from outside your planetary field of influence. I bring instructions to your race from the directive organ of what would be identified as a galactic being. Until you understand the totality of your being, you will recognize me as only that which is without your beingness. You will only recognize the oneness as you come into total perception and truth of the reality of your true being. As forerunners, hosts of the heavens, our mission is to remove the film which screens your present condition and your true nature. Our mission is to assist you ones in bridging the gap, to awaken you from sleep, to bring you to the fulfillment of your destiny. Being etheric in my natural state as one Hatonn, I have no need for verbalization. It is all but impossible for any to relate what I wish to convey, only through the words and concepts with which you are familiar. Your language was designed to facilitate commerce. What we therefore put together with its component parts can only approximate my meaning, but it is that with which we are given to work, and therefore we shall work with it until our meanings are made known in reality. There is another language more ancient, more conducive to discourse on this level, but you have forgotten it. It is the universal language of light. Some of you refer to this language as light codes. It is transferred information and is accomplished through the actual projection of living informational units. They are valid impulses of energy frequencies and are without mystical origin, and are in fact totally physical in explanation. However, until the receivers rise into the acceptance of conducting the information as given, it is distorted and often colored tremendously by the apparatus of consciousness, in a perceived expression of being, not reality. These units of information are at once more specific and more inclusive than are your words. They have been designed to convey organic information of concise, yet comprehensive, informational content. Simultaneously with this conceptual communication, you are subliminally receiving this same information through this living language of light, though your preoccupation with words leaves you with no awareness of it at this moment. Our work must always focus on bringing man again in touch with this ancient language. When you have learned to allow the silencing of your thoughts and have begun to focus attention on inner vibrational frequencies, you will become aware of a far more comprehensive picture of all that I will be telling you. Until such time as the life-giving information that comes to you from the source of your being is more readily accessible, I will work within the limitations of your linguistic structure and translate as accurately as I am able. At the same time, we must work with that which is perceived by your experience, be it war, lust, greed, joy, and/or peace, etc. Human beings become imprisoned in their concepts, and thus can they be imprisoned into a state projected upon their beings, and will act accordingly to those perceptions and instructions, be they good or bad, joyful or painful, correct or incorrect. You must be in the remembering that words and concepts can be both fallible and misleading. They are not absolutes. Do not confuse them with the realities they represent. No statement that I make can be taken as an absolute statement, for your language gives no absoluteness of definition. This does not mean that I come from a vague place. On the contrary, it means that your words are not precise enough to express the levels of awareness that I am attempting to communicate through them. If we can get the totality of the message through to even a few individual cells of your collective body, these few would be able to translate this information into forms of cultural expression that will bring about your awakening far more effectively than our overt manipulations of the historical process. The message that we reveal is the key that unlocks your own latent informational input systems. We are here to put you in direct contact with the source of all information, for the time is at hand for the remembering. You have slept long enough. Our mission is to bring an awareness to all human beings who are able to respond to a state of understanding present prior to the veil of forgetting. The mission is the bringing forth of the truth from God regarding life, and uncover the lies as thrust upon your awareness. Ours is to place the information upon the table, and then it is up to mankind to choose that which will be his to hold, however different they may be, whatever background they may have come from, using whatever conceptual structures seem appropriate. These individuals will then be instructed to translate this awareness into forms of informational exchange appropriate to their respective cultural situations, from which individual mankind springs. But always must come the integration of all perception with all other perceptions. This is why we must dwell in the daily flow of events as they impact your consciousness and experience, and cannot dwell only with soul perception. This is because if man is to move to higher understanding, it must be from the aspect of the manifestation of dimension in which he is cast. You of the physical shall deal with the physical, and so on. As this new awareness increasingly filters into everyday levels of human function, and as more and more individual human cells become aware of what is taking place, the change will accelerate exponentially. Eventually, the psychic pressure exerted by a critical mass of humanity will reach levels that are sufficient to tip the scales. At that moment, the rest of humanity will experience an instantaneous transformation of a proportion you cannot have a way of now conceiving. At that time, the spell which was cast on your race through the years past, when you plunged into the worlds of good and evil, will be shattered forever. Even now, with the healing influx of new information, the spell is beginning to lift, and man is beginning to question that which abounds about him. Even as we write, the materializing force fields of bondage and limitation are loosening, as put upon consciousness. During this period of transformation, each of you will have a variety of roles to play. Each of you will translate the life impulse into patterns appropriate to your own environment and express the impulse in your daily living. I can now blend my consciousness with the cells of yours in order to provide you with some of the more specific information that I relate, but I do this as little as possible, for you are gifted with free will choices upon which I must not tread. My primary function is to show you how to tap these systems of data retention and revelation for self. with tutoring and experiencing with my presence or that of your spiritual teacher of truth. Dear ones, beware. All spiritual beings do not bring truth. You will learn to release your definitions of who you think you are. Open yourself up to the experience of a much greater reality than you presently believe possible, and return to a level of consciousness whereby you will be enabled to communicate with those such as me, not through cumbersome words and concepts, but directly through communion with all that is. Angels and extraterrestrials? What do you want? Do you want to know more about extraterrestrials? Do you want a definition of angels? What difference does it make if we tell you that we are the same as you until you recognize who you are? Then you have a basis upon which to find understanding. If we are but you in the distant past and distant future, then you must know who you are. If we be but you as you were, would have been and still are, had you not fallen from your original state of grace, then you would recognize of us now or later, in the proper sequence of the unfoldment. We exist in a parallel universe of non-form and some in form not unlike your own, only differing in vibrational manifestation with higher knowledge. You can know that we who come have higher knowledge in our present manifestation, for we are here, and you have not yet gleaned that ability. This is also how you can know we come only in peace and love and not to harm, for we are higher learning, and with higher learning comes the truth of the falseness of physical actions. We live by the laws and within the laws of God and out the creation. We who are in etheric form, non-form, are but a reflection of that which you would be, had you not become associated with the materializing processes for whatever reason you might have chosen. Thus we act, at this time, as midwives in the birthing of you. Let us say simply that we are the angels as perceived as etheric beings, and or an enlightened brotherhood of more dense forms, come as messengers from the stars, but we are also reflections of your unity, before and after matter. I am here to enter your consciousness, here to awaken you unto truth. As I blend with you now in this communication, that is also communion, I can sense a forthcoming period of union, one which you also sense but cannot comprehend. I sense its strange and awesome realities. I feel much like an explorer in a vast and uncharted land, but with knowledge of all the pitfalls and rocks upon which a ship of passage might become grounded. You become my counterpart in the physical, and just as you become responsible for that which you push forth, so do I accept responsibility for the truth, which is given unto you through me. This requires discipline on the part of both parties, that we can become one in intent and purpose without individual opinions of ego clouding, and churning up the waters of clarity and truth projection. Are you aware of the uniqueness of physical reality? I watch as you ones drift hither and yon on a sea of efforting to ascend, meditate into another dimension, experience astral travels in the conscious beingness, mutually exclusive terms and therefore impossible in your state of experience, and doing all possible to separate from your chosen dimension by moving into another. You must come into understanding why you chose the present dimension and cease your efforting to escape the experience, for you miss the point entirely by so doing. I am met with anger and joy, pleasure and pain at my entry into your events and consciousness. We are lied about and construed in all manner of erroneous fashions. I recognize pain at the potential I see wasted and at my own commission to verbalize. But I sense pleasure at what I am experiencing through your senses, for though your sensory channels are in your exclusive dependence on them, your great limitation, they are also marvelous instruments of perception. They are truly your crowning virtue as well as your tragic flaw. This is my first exact experience in this exact manner with you ones in this particular sequence of manifestation. I witness time and space reduced to such intricate and beautiful patterns, and I rejoice when I see that you too can experience this wonderment. I experience in your presence by looking out through your eyes for a while and take in the colors and the room and the plants outside your window. I delight in the curious way you perceive light, as illumination. I would love to explore your world as a being from mine, in a playful and childlike fashion, not childishly, childlike. I can represent my beingness in this higher dimension, yet close to your own, and I can better understand how you are deceived. Such a deep realm of awesome forces, the material plane. And yet, it is with rapture that I watch you grow beyond that material limitation, a joyous experience, for you represent that which can be done in and through mankind in his higher physical form. A guideline, if you will. You will, however, not be able to continue in this stage much longer, and therefore we must get on with the business at hand. Much that I am now seeing will not survive many more years of human ignorance. It is most important that we use this time to supply you with the information necessary. It is important that we restore you, as the central control mechanism of your planet, to a proper state of function. For it shall come to pass with or without your presence, for that is the gift of Creator unto a living planet. A day will come, after all has been set to right again, when we can spend some time together just enjoying the wonders of creation. I delight in the expected opportunity to travel about with you, seeing what you would show me out of your eyes, hearing what you hear with your ears, feeling the touch of earth on that wonderful substance that is, at once, both sun and stone. I will rejoice in the sharing of my experience through me, that you can have the joyous experience of touching that which is ethereal, even the silken skin of a ship, or the magic of a song played upon naught but the currents of air. But now, students, there is work to be done. You have placed yourselves into bondage, and moreover, most of the most heinous bondage comes from that which you have had hidden from your consciousness. We must forge the conceptual tools that will give you freedom, before we can show the keys unto the masses that all might be free. So let us not tarry in our work, lest a brother be lost to the path and fail to regain his footing. What of the other reality? Actually, the other reality is the only real reality. In your natural state of being, you have no sense of identity distinct from the Creator, except when you are engaged in a relationship. On this level of being, identity comes into focus only in the context of a relationship with some other aspect of being that has become objectified, much as my identity as an angelic messenger comes into being through my relationship with you. Albeit through this rooting, utilized at present. When such a relationship is not taking place, that particular expression of you simply does not exist. You float effortlessly in the potential of God. You are not annihilated, but all definitions of you are, and you are released from their restraining influence, allowed to expand into a state of love and perfection. By and by, if it would happen that you are needed for a particular function, you will still be there, for your form identity is a specific cell, in a specific organ of a larger being. Remember the fact of quantum physics. The macro is different while the micro is sameness in every detail. When the next energizing impulse comes, it also brings your definition and instruction. You come into the necessary degree of focus for whatever is required. Throughout the course of your existence, you continually oscillate like the wave function that you essentially are, in and out of focus, in and out of definition, always moving back and forth like the pendulum on a clock, or the heart of an atom, out of the unity of being with God, into a finite expression of God's infinite potential, and then back into unity once more, back and forth, back and forth. This is the natural rhythm of your existence, just as it is mine. It is the song of God, the rhythm of life itself. When service calls, and whenever the divine impulse calls upon your services and brings you into form, you encounter other beings of infinite variety, on errands and excursions in worlds of love and light that are impossible to describe. As this happens, you experience for the duration of your contact both an identity and a linear time world. But in the course of your encounter, you are still aware of your unity with the Creator. You do not lose the certainty of your oneness with God. You are aware of your form identity and of the motion of time, yet you oscillate faster than the speed of light back and forth between your pre-manifest state and your species role form. This is nothing more or less than what every atom of physical creation is doing all the time. Before the fall, if you will, you had the ability to shift the center of your awareness from deity to identity, from form to metaform at will. You were free, as it were, to come and go as you pleased, free to emphasize whatever aspect of yourself suited the situation. It is of such that all creatures are made. In a healthy state, you are functioning in two realities at once. Half of the time you are focused on your form identity, and the other half on your identity with the totality of what is. In the fallen state of consciousness, you find yourself trapped, with your awareness on one side only, while the actual substance of your being continues to function on both sides. This is what unconsciousness is all about. You still exist in that other reality, but you are asleep. In the reality you now think to be the only reality, you are fragmented. The human race seems to be composed of a multitude of beings. In the other reality, there is only you. We are here to awaken you. Therefore, there is actually only one of you who needs to hear this message. It is important that you return to a consciousness of your true self. For though you still exist in both realities, unconsciousness of your identity with the Creator is cutting off the flow of life-giving information to the part of you that exists in form. Your existence in identity with God is the reality from which all life springs. Focusing your attention exclusively on form greatly restricts and eventually curtails the flow of life currents. As I search your symbol storage systems for a word with which to express something of the reality in which you exist as one with your Creator, I come upon an Indian word, Nagwal. It is a term which you understand to mean everything that cannot be named. You have no such word in the other languages as suitable. This is a good word for the region of being, the region of unity. I will use this word to emphasize a point I wish to make herein. In the pre-fall state of awareness, you existed in the Nagwal, the all, the everything, the nothing, the primal void where all exists in a state of potential. This is the Creator that surrounds creation like the sea surrounds a fish. Out of this Nagwal, you are called many times to dwell, for the space of a relationship, in its opposite, the tonal. The tonal is everything that can be named. It is the imaginary world of God in which all apparent differences exist. It is the playground of what is. The tonal draws all of its sustenance from the Nagwal. It cannot exist apart from the Nagwal. While the Nagwal is a dynamic yet steady state of rest, the tonal or manifest physical universe is continuously flashing on and off. This oscillation occurs in all things manifest, from the smallest subatomic particle to the greatest galaxy. All of us, angels, humans, anything that can be named, are only in form one half of the time. The other half of the time we exist in the totality of being. This totality of being that we have been calling the Nagwal has also been called God the Father, among other things. It is the life of God the Father that animates all creation. It is this reality that all healthy creatures oscillate back and forth to, and exist in, half the time. In this reality we do not exist in time or space, for we can name these. They are both features of the manifest universe. From this spaceless, timeless state, we derive all energy, blessing, and nourishment. This always holds true, even for you in the fallen condition. The difference is that in the fallen state, you are not aware of this process and therefore unable to participate in it consciously. By forfeiting your ability to oscillate in consciousness between the two realities in which you dwell, you are restricted to an awareness of just the tonal, just the material, conceptual world. You still receive your nourishment from the light of the Nagwal, but no longer directly, only through animals, plants, and minerals. You are unconscious of being, and conscious only of form. How did you lose the ability to shift your awareness from deity to identity, from form to metaform? How did you lose God consciousness? How did you fall into the illusion of separation? Let's look at it for a moment, and I will effort at explanation. It was through a simple lack of faith that you lost the ability to shift awareness. It was through a loss of confidence in the absolute perfection of the universal design. This was brought about by the entry of a single factor into your existence: fear. The serpent in the garden, so to speak, the devil in history. Through a subtle process of reasoning, this being encouraged you to move in a pattern of activity that has come to be called original sin, an absolutely absurd term but suffices for the purpose of explanation. It was a pattern of activity that you were never designed to move in. With a clever and subtle lie, you were convinced to not exactly stop trusting God, but to stop trusting exclusively in God. The moment you did this, your consciousness began to shift from God-centeredness to self-centeredness, and for the first time, you became more aware of your identity in form than of your identity in God. This shift in awareness was minimal at first, but enough to begin what was to become a long spiral downward through denser and denser levels of energy bondage and restraint. For Satan, your tempter, is the materializing influence who, in its right place, is responsible for the bonding of energy in the creation of matter. As you began to focus more and more upon your identity and form, you began thinking in terms of defending that form with unnecessary and cumbersome ego structures. It became harder for you to avoid identifying with your experience. You began to carry over past patterns of behavioral response into new relationships. This made you less effective in those relationships, because you were no longer fully present, no longer using the fullness of your potential. You were beginning to build up around yourself energized thought structures that imprisoned you. You were drawn by simple gravitational attraction to those realms of space where energy was in the process of being bonded, where matter was being created. Particles of physical substance began to gather along the magnetic lines of your thought structures, and you began to identify with denser and denser levels of physical expression. This process went on for a long while before you actually found yourself in any kind of physical garden. When you did, you had already fallen a long way from your original state of grace, but you were still functioning on a level of awareness far enough above and beyond your present condition to give rise to all the myths and legends of a physical paradise. The physical Garden of Eden lasted for many centuries of Earth time before the momentum of the materializing processes caused you to rely so much upon the physical senses that you became cut off from the direct nourishment of divine light. In reality, you have never been cut off from this nourishment, but as your sense of identity became almost exclusively wedded to your physical bodies, their growing density began demanding more and more earth substance for their support. You finally reached a point where you could no longer meet the demands of your physical bodies without work. It is at this point that your chronicles state that you were driven from the garden. In truth, you were never driven from the garden or anywhere else. The garden is still there, surrounding you even now. You have simply ceased to be aware of its presence. Language is only capable of communicating on one level at a time, yet the fall was a simultaneous, multi-leveled occurrence. While you were clothing yourself with increasing layers of material identification, you were also becoming more and more fragmented within yourself. As you began to bring into your relationships a sense of identity based on previous relationships, you were not only lessening your own presence and effectiveness in current relationships, you were also creating separation within yourself. None of your past experiences were comprehensive enough to fully identify with, in the present moment, yet you began to rely on them for your understanding of, and approach to, the present moment. Thus, the whole process of the fall was accompanied by a corresponding fragmentation of your sense of identity, your very sense of self. By the time of the physical Garden of Eden, you were already perceiving yourself to be more than one. The sexual process came into play in order to produce physical projections within which these apparently separate entities you had split yourself into could take form. Even to this day, these apparently separate beings are but your own fragmented reflections. In the fallen state, you perceive them as separate and distinct. Yet, despite all this talk of a fall and original sin, etc., you are not held prisoner by events that transpired in the dim reaches of your collective memory. You are not born into sin. You are born daily into the presence of God, yet daily you reenact the original foolishness that is recorded in all your ancient chronicles. Daily you commit original sin. Daily you eat of the forbidden fruit, and it is from moment to moment that you keep yourself imprisoned by allowing a dubious rational thought process to come between you and your immediate sensing of God's will. This was the hesitation that led to your initial fall from grace, and it is the same hesitation that keeps you now in a fallen state. There should rightly be no interval between the determination of the need to take action and the implementation of that action. This rational interference is what caused you to stumble in your primal dance of trust with God. You are now, in effect, sleeping under the influence of what could almost be seen as a spell, an illusion that prevents you from experiencing the clarity of perception that is your natural birthright. Our mission to this planet is to awaken you from sleep by whatever means necessary, and so it shall be. As I speak of these things, I speak often as if we were separate, for in your illusion, you would have it be so. But I tell you, there is only one. Therefore it must be you, must it not? Yet you dream still in the spell of matter. Do not allow matter to dictate your future any longer. Go gently in these last days of unconsciousness. I suggest you listen to that sentence again. Listen to the voices among your dreams. Listen to the whisperings within your heart. We speak of a new way of being which is as old as creation itself. We speak of a new reality which is nothing more and nothing less. Then, now, or ever shall be. Does this not make sense to you? Somewhere under all your conceptions and rational convictions, is there not a child at sleep? There is a part of you that lies like a thin wisp of certainty, a forgotten shred of simplicity, behind all your sorrow and beyond all your confusion. Be still for a moment. Just be still. Let it expand and fill you with yourself. You know these things in your heart. As I speak, you are beginning to remember the earth as you approach. You can feel her wrap you in her matter. Are your life forms not sufficiently prepared now to receive the blessing definitions that will terminate their larval period? You have told them to multiply and fill the earth, and behold, they walk the entire face of the planet and dominate every habitable landscape. As I look out across the sleeping sea of humanity, and I whisper these words into the silence of your mind, I know that I address a great being sleeping still in ignorance of itself, its wondrous self. I know that if the wild winter winds of your communication system send tatters or fragments of these messages echoing in the darkness, it will still be to the unconscious that I speak. But not much longer, dear ones, not much longer. For the conscious have seen the sky start to brighten in the east, and have felt the warming spring of eternal life begin to thaw the hardness of their preconceptions. The time is at hand to accept the understanding. Forget all but the song I am singing in your soul. Be in this moment here with me, open to the life that I am. I bring the burning fire of purification, information, revelation, open to all that you are. I bring the enunciation of your birth. It could be now, this very moment. Let everything that you imagine yourself to be drift to a state of rest, and feel me rise up within. I am rising, you know, like a spring, from the depth of your being, my being, and we are one. But you must come into the realization, and I can only tell you how it is. The potential of this universe is limitless. Her revelations of potential are infinite beyond number. But there are no Star Wars or advanced and fearsome civilizations beyond your own. Because if civilizations are fearsome, they do not advance beyond your own. They simply become extinct, to rise up in the soils of another world, a little wiser, until they learn. Our task today is to help you remove the blinders that historically have distorted your perception. Realize that what you feel in your heart determines what you see. Perception rides upon the expressions of the heart like a canoe rides upon the river. When your heart expresses fear in any of its turbulent forms, your understanding becomes jumbled, confused. You perceive through the waves of illusion. But when you love, you understand, for then you share the vision, the very perception of God. You are going to have to return, like the salmon, to the place of your origin. You must begin to birth your moments of experience only in love. You can root your life in fear and know the predictability of granite, the strength of marble, and what security there is in limestone's patient changing. Or you can root your life in love and join us in helping to ease the human world through awesome changes of these times. I am known as Yorgos Series Hatonn, Commander-in-Chief Earth Project Transition of the Pleiades Sector Flight Command and the Intergalactic Federation Fleet, Ashtar Command. Let there be no misunderstanding of who I am. I come in this portion as a fourth-dimensional project commander in charge of Earth transition. Thank you very much for time and attention on this day.